Chapter 16 Slab. Things livened up as the evening wore on. The number of students swelled, and once the bar ran out of seating, they began propping themselves along the walls of the dance floor area. Down by the entrance, 2 folding tables had been brought in. One did a brisk trade giving away leaflets and selling liberationist books and Stop Malaric posters. Lauren volunteered to help out on the other table, which hosted a free vegan buffet. Quite a few students looked like they needed a good meal, and she happily ladled out guacamole, bean dip, corn chips, marinated mushrooms, and fruit salad. Every so often, a bunch of hotheads would swagger in from another bar or meeting, looking for trouble, or at the least to try winding up some veggies. One red-faced drunk in a Fred Perry shirt asked Lauren if she had any chicken drumsticks stashed under the counter. She was prepared to go along with the joke, until the dude tried dunking a grubby finger in the bean dip. She grabbed his thumb, twisted it into a lock, and brandished a fork with her free hand before doing her best little girl grin. "Leave," she growled. "Otherwise, you'll find out which orifice I plan to insert this fork into." The humiliated student staggered out of the Purcell room as Lauren received bows and applause from his mates. The food had been prepared by a middle-aged woman called Anna Kent. "You're quite a little firebrand," she said as the drunks shuffled out of the room. Anna tousled Lauren's hair, a gesture Lauren found oddly upsetting because it was exactly what her real mum used to do when she was proud of her. James felt out of his depth, sitting with Sophie and her 2 mates. They asked him if he had a girlfriend, and he said no, which set the trio of girls off in a conversation about their first boyfriends. Their stories about first kisses and getting caught in compromising positions by angry parents made him laugh, and the girls bought him pints, or more often half pints, until he felt drunk and giggly. But he was also a touch sad, because the trio of beautiful, intelligent girls were all 5 years older, and no matter how much he liked them, he was just a kid as far as they were concerned. "What took so long?" Sophie asked, when a red-faced Viv finally sidled up alongside her. "It's pistols at dawn in there," Viv said. "There's this whole massive bun fight going on over who gets to run the Alliance." James had heard so much of Ryan's rambling over the past days that he couldn't help being curious about how it was panning out. "Have they had the vote yet?" "They had the first vote straight away, unanimously re-electing Ryan onto the committee, but he's made it clear that he wants to take over from Madeline. They were also pretty pissed off that he'd brought Zara along to a secret meeting." "So what about you?" James asked. "Did they kick you out?" "Actually, they said I was a valuable activist and just wanted to suspend me for 3 months. But I told them exactly where they could stick that idea. And as I was heading out, I pointed at Georgie boy and I goes, 'If I ever see you again, I'm going to pin you down and shit on your head.'" You should have seen the look on his mug. Fueled by the beer, James started laughing out of control at the image of weedy little George getting crapped on. "That's very mature," Sophie said, smiling wryly at her girlfriends. "So what do you reckon?" Viv asked. "I can't stand this stuffy hole. Who's up for driving out somewhere and howling at the moon? I've got Jack Daniels and vodka in the car." Sophie shrugged. "Yeah, what the hell?" Viv looked at Kyle and Tom, who were now snuggled up, with their arms around each other's backs. "Oi, poofters!" Viv shouted. "Gonna take a spin. You coming?" Tom and Kyle both nodded as Viv looked at James. "What about you, cop killer? You up for a ride? Or has mummy got to tuck you up early on a school night?" James didn't fancy being the odd man out amidst 2 couples, but he had a mission, and Zara would expect him to go. "She likes me home by 11, James grinned. But she's not around to stop me, so I'm in. As James stood up, Kyle passed by, heading for the toilets, and gave him a nudge that clearly meant come with me. The toilets were nasty, with a smell that made your eyes water and an overflowing urinal that had turned the entire floor into a puddle. Okay, Kyle said, looking over his shoulder to make sure nobody was around as he stood at the urinal beside James. I've been working on Tom. He reckons Viv is planning to get in with another group. It's apparently something to do with a mate of Sophie's. Is it the AFM? James said, as he started peeing. He says they're extremists, Kyle said. I doubt it's the AFM itself, but all the intelligence reports say that the number of radicals out there is small, so there's a strong possibility that they're linked. What's our plan? All we can do is hang around Tom and Viv, keep ourselves in the picture, and gradually put the idea across that we want to get involved with an extremist group too. Might be tricky for me though, James said. I mean, you and Tom are practically ripping each other's kid off in there. But there's a big age gap between me and Viv. That thing with the firecracker might have been a perverse stroke of luck, but I can't see him hanging around with my 14-year-old butt once the novelty wears off. Kyle nodded as he zipped up his jeans. Well, you know what Viv likes about you. You'll just have to play it to the max and act even crazier than he does. It was gone 11 when Ryan and Zara arrived home in Corbin Copse. Lauren had dozed off in the back, but woke up as Ryan tried carrying her into the cottage. Better have a shower before I get into bed, Lauren yawned. As she headed dozily up to the bathroom, Ryan slumped in an armchair and buried his face in his hands. That was a total bloody betrayal, he said listlessly. 3 years in prison, 5 votes out of 24. They can stuff their bloody committee. I'm setting up my own thing. Not while this mission's going on, you're not, Zara said firmly. Ryan looked up, surprised. Pardon me? We need you inside the Zebra Alliance, Zara explained. That wasn't our deal, Ryan said indignantly. I wanted the AFM out of the Zebra Alliance, but if I'm not even part of the Alliance, there's no point. No point for you, Zara said, but our mission is to unearth the AFM. I want you inside that committee room feeding us information. How can I go back in there? Ryan said. They utterly humiliated me. Swallow your pride and do your job. Or what? Ryan sneered. Don't try my patience, Zara snapped. I'm dead tired and I've been listening to your voice since 6:30 this morning. Your parole states that you can't leave the county of Avon. If you want to pick a fight with me, I'll see you wake up in a London police cell and serve the other 3 years of your sentence. Now we're seeing your teeth, Ryan yelled. The British government and its crack teams of underage fascists. Ryan, the AFM is out there and people are getting killed, Zara yelled back. I've put 6 months' work into this mission. We've got 3 agents in place. We've spent 250 grand on a house and a car, and I'm missing out on my own kids growing up. Once we've got solid information on the AFM, you can set up your own group with no one but your parole officer to worry about. Until then, you will stick to our deal. Ryan twisted uncomfortably in his chair, knowing he was beaten. I'll speak to Madeline tomorrow. I'll apologise and tell her that I hope we can work well together in future. Zara hadn't enjoyed laying down the law, but the kids might be in danger if Ryan stepped out of line, so she had to be absolutely certain that he knew who was boss. I'm going to heat up some cocoa in the microwave, Zara said. Would you like a mug? Soya milk? He asked. That's the only kind we have, Zara nodded. I'm sorry, Ryan said, rubbing his eyes. I came out expecting a hero's welcome, but I guess people forget about you faster than you'd expect. Viv's car was an ancient Mercedes saloon. He was too drunk to drive, so he let Sophie sit behind the wheel. She pulled up sharply at the end of a pedestrian alleyway between two metal-sided superstores. "Is this it?" Sophie asked, peering into the darkness. "It'll do," Viv said, as he flung open the front passenger door. James did the same with the door behind him. "Keep the engine running," Viv said, leaning into the car and looking at Sophie. "Give us a shot of that JD." Tom reached around the front passenger seat, and his older brother grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels and began tipping it down his neck. "Have a drop for courage," Viv said, holding the bottle out to James. The whiskey burned as it passed down James's throat, and he almost doubled over coughing. "Jesus!" James croaked, clutching at his throat. While the trio inside the car giggled at James's discomfort, Viv opened up the boot. It struck James how reckless Viv was as he looked inside at spray cans, tools, bolt croppers, balaclavas, gloves, Zebra Alliance pamphlets, and a video camera. If the police ever searched Viv's car, they'd have a field day. "Right," Viv said, grabbing a can of spray paint and a cardboard stencil before pointing at a large triangular lump that had been broken off the edge of a paving slab. "You got the strength to carry that, James?" "I'll manage," James slurred, feeling his muscles tighten as he reached into the boot and grabbed the chunk of stone. Viv ran off down the alleyway and promptly tumbled over a pile of black rubbish bags that were made invisible by the darkness. James cracked up laughing, despite the weight straining his arms. "Goat shaggers!" Viv screamed, kicking out wildly at the bags and sending one on an arc several meters into the air. It crashed down to the echo of empty tin cans. The pair ambled down the rest of the alleyway and found themselves at the entrance to a supermarket. The sliding doors were locked for the night, but all the lights were on inside. The aisles were blocked up with giant metal trolleys and sour-faced staff stacking the shelves. "Right," Viv said. "You ready?" James nodded as a Jack Daniels-fueled burp seared up his throat. Viv's stencil was about half a meter across. He checked there was no supermarket staff looking his way before pressing it up against the glass doors of the main entrance and spraying paint through the gaps. This technique was much faster than writing graffiti, and when he pulled the stencil away, the slogan was written immaculately: "Meat is murder." "Rightio," Viv said. "Your turn, cop killer." James took a 3-step run-up and lobbed the chunk of paving through a plate glass window. The shatterproof sheet broke into a million greenish pebbles as the stone sailed on, demolishing a display stand filled with credit card application forms. Viv was heading back towards his car even before the glass broke, and James only took a brief glance at the astonished shelf stackers before going after him. Sophie hit the accelerator as James bundled onto the back seat, squeezing alongside Kyle and Tom. The car was already in second gear by the time he'd slammed the door. "Yee-haw!" Viv shouted, giving a 2-fingered salute out of the window as his ancient Mercedes squealed out of the deserted parking lot and onto a main road.